Thanks, Chair. It's certainly the kindest welcome and introduction I've ever had from John Butterley or anyone associated with the Glasgow Forum. First open meeting I attended when John was in the chair at the Forum conference in the BB Hall. What I got as an introduction was, well, folks, here's another bloody bureaucrat. He's here to explain the ways of the world. Well, we are here to change it. And by God, he did. I'm here to say a few words for absent friends at this 50th anniversary event. It's very difficult, really, to believe that there are now over 60 community-based associations in Glasgow and the west of Scotland, and they own over 80,000 houses. It's astonishing. So there's been a huge number of folk involved over the last 50 years. And my purpose is to say a few words on those who've sadly passed away and can't be here with us. And I would start with the three Govanhill ladies. They were remarkable women. It's been something that's been mentioned, but Govanhill was, as far as I'm concerned, the first registered community-based housing association. And it was run by, a lot of people here will remember them, because they were there for, like the previous two speakers, they were there for a long time. Joan Grant, Anne Scott, and the wee chair, Betty Stevenson. So it was no surprise. I think I may be wrong about this because I'm not that up to date in the last 20 years, but there was a big milestone, the 10,000th house improved by community-based associations. And to my amazement, and certainly to the delight of these three ladies, it was the first royal visit to Glasgow. And it was Charlie Boy, the new king, who was coming up as the Prince of Wales. And so the excitement in Govanhill was intense. They decided that they would take him to the best back court that had been done in Glasgow. It was full of sculptures, rhinoceroses, elephants, kids' shoots. We would have called it an adventure playground, but they called it, and they were delighted with it. But what the Govanhill ladies didn't understand was that the Prince of Wales had done his homework, and he was really up for the day. And he came out to this back court and he looked at all these things, and the women were all hanging out the windows, waving flags and everything else, but there was no one around. And so he said, Betty, what is that? What is that? So they're looking over. Well, it's a rhinoceros. You know about rhinoceroses. They're a foreign animal. No. What is that? That. What is that? And he was looking at a clothes pole. And the rest of us couldn't believe it. The special branch were amazed at this. He's looking at a clothes pole, and he says, what do you do in the clothes pole? Hang out the washing. Well, why is there no washing out? So he then goes round the windows. The IRA were in full motion in the Gorbals at the present moment, so special branch are having kittens. He says to the women, get the kids out into the back court, get them playing in this. Stop waving your flags. And the next thing, with the special branch chasing, he's away up. He's away up the close. He's round into Cathcart Road. He's in Sims the Baker's. And he's bought out the entire sausage rolls and jam donuts from Sims the Baker in stock. But he's got no money to pay for it. Sims the Baker are delighted with this sudden interest in their thing. They were on the front page of the Daily Record the next day, and they bought a sweetie shop in Millport with the profits they made. And that really was a big laugh from the Govanhill ladies, because he then came back in the back court. Everyone was relaxed. He was speaking to the women who were now out in the back court, and he he taught what I think, it's not just the tenacity of the local people running community-based housing associations. It's a great phrase from McDermott, to be yourself and make that worth being. Not just to be yourself and to be yourself and make that worth being. And that's what a lot of the leaders, these females, did for community-based housing associations, the pioneers in the early days. A few more I'd have to mention, because people from Maryhill here, and Jean Maguire, the original founder member secretary, was an astonishing lady. The GIA gave her the tribute of calling her the Medicis of Maryhill, because of the amount of sponsorship of local architects. Glasgow, by the mid-1980s, was actually the scaffolding capital of the UK. I mean, anyone that was involved in a scaffolding business, well, they all own half of Portugal now. What's happened? But it wasn't just the pioneering work that they did in their local areas and the spin-off in design and gable design. The Medicis of Linthouse I've definitely got to mention. The gable walls on the other side of the Clyde Tunnel as you go through. Now, don't crash your car, but have a look at these two gables. They're absolutely remarkable. They've joined the Medicis of Partick, who stopped doing the gable walls because of the local graffiti artists who scrawled on, "Painter, put your brush away. The Partick toy are here to stay." But these were things that happened. What you needed in the community-based associations, beyond the local areas, Govanhill, Maryhill, and the growth of the 20 community-based housing associations in the city, was they needed a support network. And John Butterley, Eddie McEachran of Elder Park, Ned Donaldson of Springburn and Postle Park, they were astonishing leaders in the campaigning work that went on. My favourite one was the getting a petition, because the whole demand in the 80s was for better standards and more resources. And my favourite was what they did was they raised a huge petition, and two of the voluntary members, I'll never forget them, they were seen off in George Square, taken by bike down to Westminster. Sandy Busby of Yoker and Jim Meldrum of Reedvale. It was a colossal effort, and it paid off. The way you worked the royal family, the way you worked petitions to Parliament, the way you handled it yourselves, it was absolutely remarkable. The other big support network, because running a community-based association, it isn't all, despite Irene and real belief it was all pleasure. It wasn't. The tricky issues of staff salaries, employment, as staff grew, these were real difficult issues, and they go on being real big issues. But the work that was done by Councillor Helen McGregor, by John Ferguson of Parkhead, and I'll never forget one of the first chairpersons Andrew Robertson had in the Glasgow, in the EVH, the Clydeside Federation that became EVH, the one and only Dame Flora Glenn definitely gets a mention. The second wave of the formation of CBHAs, Anna's dealt with brilliantly, but Frances McCall of Calvi, the work that she did with the 6 pilots, and also Marion Wright and David Mackenzie from Postle, Hawthorne, they were phenomenal. Jim Winters up from London, and we don't have time to tell you about the lobbying work that he did with Tory Secretaries of State, but they still don't get on planes safely to see whether he has booked a seat next to them, which was the most incredible bit of personal lobbying. But that was all done to secure that money that Anna mentioned. These things didn't come easily, so there's always been problems. I'd have to agree completely with Raymond that the promotion of CBHAs also depends on having friends and allies in high places. It's great to see so many from Glasgow District and local MSPs here today, because they're critical. If you're going to get to remove yourself from this age of anxiety, into an age of growth and new associations and co-ops, as well as stabilising the present, then you definitely need people who are allies in powerful places. And I can't stop this toast without mentioning two of these allies, because what Raymond said about Theo Crombie, the book needs to be read about what that guy did as a city council representative on a UK House of Commons committee, the Housing Association Registration Advisory Committee. And the fact that he drove through against a lot of other people, if you're residents in a local area, you're entitled to become a member of a community-based housing association, and you will form the majority in the committee. That was a key thing, and it underpins the whole strength of the movement. My own chum and personal friend, Councillor John Grays, the last one who I would mention, he's an unsung hero. In my view, he was with Strathclyde Region, and he really saw, especially when the low-demand estates associations grew, he really saw the importance of making sure community services facilities were brought in the back of housing upgrade programmes and housing renewal programmes. He was way ahead of his time, and the wider action monies that he was instrumental in bringing in, the streetscape money that made areas safe for local residents and local kids, was quite remarkable. So to all these friends and allies and individuals who put so much into community-based housing associations, all I would ask you to do is, those of you that are able to try and get a glass of water, stand up and join me in my toast to absent friends. Absent friends.